Welcome, Poozers, to Green Lantern's podcast. I am Green Lantern Will Smith of Sector 2814, and today I give you the timeline of information on where Green Lantern TV began and where we are now. Time to move on from the formalities and get right into the breakdown. On October 29th, 2019, The Hollywood Reporter wrote that Greg Berlanti, who was a major player behind the Arrowverse TV growth on the CW network, had two DC comic-inspired series at HBO Max in the works. It was stated that Green Lantern was one of those two. Quote, "Both of these original DC properties we will be creating for HBO Max will be unlike anything seen on television," Berlanti said. Berlanti was now up to 21 live-action scripted originals across 7 different outlets. He went on to say, "An anthology series of cautionary tales set in a world where superpowers exist and, in what promises to be our biggest DC show ever made, we will be going to space with a Green Lantern television series. But I can't reveal any more about that just yet." At the time of the announcement, there was no word on episode count or who any of the writers were. Move forward one full year, and on October 9th, 2020, it was reported through Variety that the Green Lantern series got greenlit at HBO Max. Seth Grahame-Smith and Mark Guggenheim were penned to write the scripts for the show. Plot details did come with the announcement. The show was going to depict the adventures of a multitude of Lanterns, including Guy Gardner, Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, and Alan Scott. Alan Scott was the Earth's very first Green Lantern. Earth, by the way, is inside of Sector 2814, hence the number drop in the intro. The series will also include other fan favorites, including Sinestro and Kilowog, and there would be new heroes added to the ranks of the Green Lantern Corps. On top of writer duties, it was said that Seth Grahame-Smith would also serve as the showrunner. Berlanti Productions would produce in association with Warner Brothers Television. The other piece of information added to the article was that the show would be adopting the 10-episode per season format, despite new shows now commonly featuring just 8 or so. This, however, would not hold, and the show would move to an 8-episode format down the line. A few weeks later, after this, on October 24th, 2020, comicbook.com reported that Guggenheim commented briefly on the series and its expectations during a recorded panel for Comic-Con International's website. The quote was, "I happen to believe, and this is not a universally held opinion, that you can't do a 10-hour show or an 8-episode show like an 8-hour movie," Guggenheim said. "I don't think that works. When I see it done, there's always some flabby episodes in the middle. I think you have to approach it like a TV series and approach each episode like its own entity. Even though it's streaming, even though hopefully people will binge it, you've got to make each episode a satisfying meal. You've got to look at it with a different tempo than you would in a 2-hour movie. That being said, certainly the show for HBO Max that we are all working on, we are approaching it with the production ambitions of a movie. So we're writing it like a TV show, but we're hoping to produce it like a film." About 1 month later, on November 19th, 2020, the Illuminerdi.com uncovered exclusive details about the main character descriptions for the show, as well as other information that the show was going to start filming in April of 2021, and that they were hoping to shoot in LA. The casting call for the leads of the show were as follows. Guy Gardner, white male, 30s. A hulking mask of masculinity as rendered in the comics. Guy is the personification of hyper-patriotism found in the 1980s that birthed Hulk Hogan and Rambo. However, Guy is still likable. He might act foolish, but he is not a fool. Guy loves his daughter and his wife with all his hard-partying, fast-driving, hot-tempered heart. But like many alpha males, there is a deep undercurrent of pain driving it all. Bree Jarta, black female, 30s. Few Lanterns take their commitment to the Corps and its purpose more seriously than Bree. Bree is a half-human, and it's the human half that she's worked hard to forget. Bree has an alien mother and a human father. However, she was raised on a more enlightened planet and with an advanced society. Bree outworked her peers and earned her ring, only to find herself partnered with Guy Gardner. And lastly, Alan Scott. White male, 28 years old. From the outside, Alan is the model of early 1940s, the image of a G-man. Alan is handsome, clean-shaven, and well-dressed without a hair out of place. He has spent his young life trying to personify truth, justice, and the American way. He's already a household name in LA and is seen as a hero thanks to the positive press coverage. However, for all of Alan's honesty, there is one huge lie that follows him. He is a gay man. A fact that, in his era, could cost him his job or even his life. On December 23rd, 2020, the Illuminati once again provided another scoop on some other lanterns that were expected to appear. This round of news claimed that Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz were being added to the roster, and with this, it felt like some of the story was starting to shape up as well. The descriptions for the two lanterns were as follows. Jessica Cruz. Protecting the galaxy is hard enough. It's even tougher when you're the type of person who's uncomfortable leaving the apartment. Life has forced Jessica to become self-reliant at a young age. She's worked her way through school while taking care of her younger sister. She's bright, determined. Looking at her, you would never know the struggle going on inside. Jessica lives with a sometimes crippling anxiety disorder. She's been fighting fear longer than any of our other lanterns. Simon Baz. For as long as he can remember, Simon's loved the Green Lanterns. Using his innate charm and gift of gab, he worked in Detroit as a vendor. However, business hasn't been good lately. In the wake of 9/11, America has grown distrustful of young Middle Eastern men. The article went on to speculate on the timeline of the show, and if the story was going to be more or less taking place over multiple eras, which would make sense given the Green Lanterns involved. On December 30th, 2020, NightEdgeMedia.com posted a leak. They found an audition tape for Jessica Cruz by actress Elizabeth Judd Salinas of Hamilton fame. The videos have since been taken down, but the gist of the tape was that she was having nightmares and forcing herself to take sleeping pills at night to go to bed. She was responsible for the death of a friend earlier in her life. A second scene had Cruz mentoring a newly chosen Green Lantern, who was to be Simon Baz, and they were discussing their training. Moving forward to April 20th, 2021, Deadline reported that Finn Wittrock of American Horror Story fame had been tapped to star as Guy Gardner in the Green Lantern HBO series. Note that at this point in the year, the show was supposed to already be filming, but it never happened. This was the first casting announcement for any of the characters. Wittrock has earned 2 Emmy nominations for American Horror Story Freak Show and for Versace American Crime Story. On April 30th, 2021, Variety, in their article about Finn Wittrock being cast in the lead role for the show, actually gave us different dates and eras of the show. They wrote, "The story spans decades and galaxies, beginning on Earth in 1941 with the very first Green Lantern, secretly gay FBI agent Alan Scott, and in 1984 with cocky alpha male Gardner and half-alien Bree Jarda. They will be joined by a multitude of other Lanterns, from comic book favorite to never-before-seen heroes. At this time, the article confirmed early reports that the show would be 10 one-hour episodes, which again, we know is not true anymore. The series will be co-written and executive produced by Greg Berlanti, Seth Grahame-Smith, and Mark Guggenheim, with Grahame-Smith serving as the showrunner. Jeff Johns, Sarah Schechter, David Madden, and David Katzenberg also executive produce, with Elizabeth Hunter and Sarah Sadie co-executive producing. Berlanti Productions will produce in association with Warner Brothers Television, where Berlanti is under a rich overall deal. On May 27th, 2021, Deadline got the second casting reveal in Alan Scott, played by Jeremy Irvine. The actor played in Treadstone and was now joining Finn Wittrock as Lanterns on the HBO show. Jeremy confirmed this news himself on his Instagram page and posted an image of Alan Scott and quoted the Green Lantern oath in the caption for it. On November 21st, 2021, we had a large drop of audition leaks as reported on murphysmultiverse.com. Scene 1. The scene features Bree Jarta, who we can only assume is speaking with a Guardian or dispatch of some sort on Oa, as she attempts to talk her way onto a research mission for the Dominators. This sequence seems to follow what sounds like a hostage situation that resulted in multiple fatalities to other Lanterns. The audition tape would match the rumors that the Dominators would be one of the era's antagonists. Scene 2. The second Jarta scene offers us a much better look into her character. She's confronted some people in a local diner in Florida. It looks like her partner, Guy Gardner, may have provoked some. They are set to be Lanterns of the 80s storyline in the show. They will likely be facing the Dominators throughout the show. It looks like the tension between the two will also play into it, as they definitely won't be getting along. Their two personalities will clash throughout the story, as one is headstrong and the other one is hard-headed. The Guardians created a duo that's sure to spark some problems down the road. The tape also highlights the racism that Jarta faces in the diner, as she notes the Confederate flags, the attitude of the waitress, and the glare she gets from other patrons. It's great to see the show highlighting broader topics than just a usual clash between good and evil. Scene 3. The final tape features Alan Scott, who we know as the Green Lantern of the Golden Age. He is a founding member of the Justice Society of America. It does seem unlikely that he'll be involved with them in this series. Since the first report, we've learned that Scott will be an LGBTQ character, with his storyline taking place in the 1940s. Being a member of such a community could cost someone their life during that era. It also revealed that Scott is an active police officer, and a rather good one at that. The press is interviewing him after he took down a local mob boss. We see how frantic Scott is when someone even jokes about him possibly being queer. Not even his Green Lantern ring can give him a feeling of safety in a time so full of so much prejudice and discrimination. On June 8th, 2022, we got an update on the show, and it had some pretty big implications. Mark Guggenheim was on a fan podcast called The Hall of Justice, and he was asked about the Green Lantern TV series. Here's what he had to say about it. Quote, "First of all, I think it's important to note that I'm not showrunning this show, so I even really have less license than normal to speak about it. I wish I could talk about it. It's a really, really cool project. It's obviously very near and dear to my heart. I can say that it's funny. I'm working today, in fact, on the outline for the season finale. So we are working away." On October 26, 2022, we got major news. The Hollywood Reporter reported that the Green Lantern HBO Max series that was being developed had lost its writer and showrunner in Seth Grahame-Smith. Not all news was bad, though, depending on where you fall. The show was originally focused on Guy Gardner, Bree Jarta, and Alan Scott, but the project would now focus on fan favorite Jon Stewart. He was one of DC's first black superheroes, and a lot of folks grew up with him during the Justice League animated series, as he was the featured Lantern. The other news was that the budget for the show was also going to take a hit. The original estimates had the show costing something in the ballpark of $120 million, but the cost going forward could be significantly less. That could be good or bad, but I will share my take on that in a future podcast episode due to it being a touchy topic that I would like to give its own episode. Maybe I'll do an episode on the pros and cons of a lesser budget for a more focused story. Moving to November 10th, 2022, Sarah Aubrey, who is the head of originals at HBO Max, had a small update on the Green Lantern TV series, saying, quote, "We remain very excited by the opportunity to make a big 4-quadrant space opera with Greg and Sarah for HBO Max." During this time, James Gunn has become the biggest player in DC, and he is more or less in charge about the next 10 years or so of DC Studios projects. Since he took the job, he has been relatively quiet about Green Lantern as a group, and even quieter about the upcoming show and movie. He did, on Twitter, confirm that he wasn't interested in bringing back Ryan Reynolds as a Green Lantern, and figured himself that Ryan Reynolds had better things to do as well. On the flip side, He did confirm via a very short tweet that Green Lantern is, quote, important when directly asked by a fan on December 10th, 2022. On December 26, 2022, the day after Christmas, Home of DC on Twitter tried to break my heart. In a now deleted tweet, there was a claim that a leaker with a Patreon was reporting that the Green Lantern HBO Max series was dead. A reporter for Screen Rant and somebody who seems very in tune with DC and HBO on information about the Green Lantern show said the previous week he was in contact with DC and HBO and that this was not at all what they had to say. I absolutely am going to butcher his name, but there will be links to his social media as well as every source of information I have in this podcast linked below. His reply to this tweet was, "Yeah, I can go ahead and debunk this already, as I was in communication with HBO Max and Warner Brothers TV last week about the Green Lantern TV show. There have not been any changes made, as the show is still in development. Also, Merry belated Christmas, everyone," and he signed off with a heart emoji. And that's from Andy, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. But again, there will be links to his social media, and you guys absolutely should follow him. Somehow, at CBR on Twitter, with over 300,000 followers, didn't get the news, and they helped spread the report that the show was canceled. This time, though, James Gunn, aka DC Daddy, debunked it directly himself with a quick and short reply. He just tweeted right back at them, quote, "Fake." Finally, and this may or may not have anything to do with the show, but it might, so I feel like I need to report it. Discussing Film on Twitter on January 9th shared that Greg Berlanti was signed to a new overall deal with Warner Brothers Discovery to stay with the studio until 2027. And while he has many projects, even the article that was linked from Variety made specific mention of the upcoming HBO Max show with, quote, including a Green Lantern series, end quote. That is all for now, Poozers. I will see you folks in 2 weeks or so, which gives you just enough time for you to recharge your rings. If you have anything I forgot in this podcast you think I should add in a future podcast, you can reach out to me on a multitude of social media platforms. On Instagram, we are Lanterns Podcast. On Twitter, we are also Lanterns Podcast. On Facebook, it's a crazy link, so I will just link it. But find me on YouTube at Green Lanterns Podcast and find me on TikTok at Green Lanterns Podcast. A real quick note before I go, if you guys could, please go to Twitter, go to every social media you have, and look up the Emerald Enthusiast and the Emerald Echo podcast and the blog of Oa. They are tremendous resources in the Green Lantern fandom, and everybody should absolutely be checking them out. They've been very cool and welcoming me into the fandom because I come from Lord of the Rings, and it's nice to meet some friendly faces early. Please show them some love. And with that, in brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.